Karenza gave me some great plugs before this. She's a tough act to follow, but she is an ENFJ, and I am an INTJ. Any other INTJs out there? Okay, cool. Well, unfortunately, we don't have any like super cool, admirable superheroes. I just Googled it really quickly, and I think it's Doctor Strange and Snape from Harry Potter. So I promise you, I'm not like a maniacal mastermind. But anyway. So I'm really happy to be here today. This has been such a wonderful experience. I feel like I'm with my people. It's great. I've learned a lot and made some really great connections, and I hope you all have as well. So I'm here to talk about two things that I'm really passionate about, startups and product marketing. And the twist is I don't work for startups anymore. I work for a big enterprise. So first of all, a little bit about me. I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, moved to Austin, Texas, and basically have spent 15 plus years in Austin, either going to school or, really operating in either a product management or a product marketing function at growth stage companies. So 15 years, growth stage companies. Guess what? I burned out. I was tired. So a couple years ago, I left my last startup and went into kind of like freelance world where I spent some time working with seed stage startups, which was really fun. Actually, startups from people who I had previously worked with who had gone off and started their own companies. So it was a great example of just having fun working with people that you've enjoyed working with in the past in a new context. So then I was approached with this opportunity at IBM, and I joined IBM in January of this year. So, the proverbial big fish in the small, jumping to the big bowl. But actually, this big bowl is beyond big. So a little bit about IBM. I'm sure you guys are familiar in some way of IBM, but just a few quick data points on it. So it's a 108-year-old company. It has 350,000 employees. There's about 500 product marketers at IBM. We have a $128 billion market cap. And oh, by the way, we just acquired Red Hat earlier this year for like $34 billion. So the scale just blows my mind. I can't even like wrap my head around it. So I manage one of 5 business units from a product marketing standpoint. So I'm responsible for systems, which is, old school hardware, servers, storage, mainframes, which is about $8 billion of revenue and has really sweet margin for hardware, so 49%. So we're kind of old school, but we're also the cash cow. So it's a really interesting place to be. So hopefully everyone's familiar with this life cycle. I had kind of acquired a sweet spot of companies of really working in this 50 to 100 million. 50 to 100 million, I know how to build a team, I know how to implement processes, and really kind of that was my love. I really loved that stage. So going from there to a company that was way in the maturity stage. And, of course I knew this going in. By the way, I thought this was a really interesting graph because it kind of shows this profit and cash, intersection here somewhere around shakeout. And I don't know if anyone has ever been at a stage of a company where you're like, yeah, like I'm in it. This is perfect. Like, so I thought it was really interesting because I would love to feel like that one day, but it seems like we never feel like that in the moment. It's always in hindsight. So essentially, my world's got completely turned upside down. You know, I've been doing product marketing for a long time, and basically, I enter a place where nothing was the same. Uh, Put aside all the acronyms that were, you know, internal speak that I had to ramp up on, but everything is completely different, right? So, startup, you're talking about double, triple digit growth. Enterprise, single, maybe double digit. Your long-term horizon at a startup, I mean, you're like hand to mouth, right? You're talking about, oh, 1 year from now. Wow, that's really forward thinking. Enterprises, you know, you're looking at 5, 10 years. Your marketing budget at startups, you're just like counting every penny. At enterprise, like I am just blown away by the size of our budgets and how much we spend. Um, People at startups, you have too few. And in some ways at enterprises, I feel like you have too many. You know, there's just so many people running around. You're like, wouldn't this be more efficient if we had less people? Um, and then it seems like in any situation, when it comes to resources, there are never enough. So that's something that remains constant, that you're always battling for resources and trying to figure out how to do so much with a little bit. So I thought that product marketing would be like this, because when I was building teams and I had control of everything that was going on, there goes my ENTJ, personality traits. This is how I liked to grow teams, right? So you have Voltron, you have people who are different, you know, areas, and we all come together and we formulate this like big superpower machine that can do more than combine than any of us separately. But what I really felt like is that product marketing felt like this. I had this like multi-headed beast that I am constantly trying to tame, constantly trying to get everyone, you know, there's always like dynamics and who's leading and everything like that. So it's been really interesting. You know, IBM is a highly matrixed organization. So you're always kind of trying to figure out like what role you play. So I'll come back to that in a minute. So all of this kind of caused me to have a little bit of an existential crisis in terms of, you know, what is product marketing, right? So product marketing was simple when I was at a smaller company, because if something needed to be done, then I was the one to do it, or someone on my team was the person to do it. So we were all kind of, you know, complete ownership. Oh, but at IBM, oh, you want to do sales enablement? We have a sales enablement team to do that. You want to do research? Oh, we have a research team to do that. You know, we have a content team. So it's like, okay, you take all this stuff away. It's like, well, what am I supposed to be doing, right? And a lot of product marketers that work at large companies, they fall into a trap of just creating PowerPoints and pontificating about things and drawing diagrams. And I do not want to have that same fate, right? So it's like, how do you be strategic while still kind of like, you know, working and utilizing these specific teams? So this is the best way that I would describe what I did if I got called into the Bob's office. And ooh, there's an E missing on my presentation. Sorry about that. I'm sorry, a G missing. So product marketing, you know, it's the Southern version of it, is kind of the intersection between the strategy and vision and the execution and plan. And why I think that this is so important and something that I've observed in my short time at IBM is there is so much that gets lost between. So between the user groups, between the business units. And if no one is there connecting the dots, then we just keep all running down the field together and we don't get that like Voltron quality. So, what this means is that, my job requires a ton of coordination and a ton of people. Oh my gosh, all the people. So product marketing has taken on a different role for me, but I've actually really enjoyed it, and I've really loved the relationship building and working with so many disparate groups. So it's kind of executing at enterprise scale, which is kind of the boring way to say it. When I was thinking about this presentation, I was reminded of a book. Has anyone read a book called Small is Beautiful? Okay, I would highly recommend it. It is quite amazing. This is an economist named E.F. Schumacher. He wrote this book in 1973. It is an economic manifesto kind of disdaining the overconsumption of society. He talks about free trade. He talks about locally sourced goods. So I read this book like back in high school, but it's been on my bookshelf and I think about it regularly now, and how before his time this wonderful economist was. But I also thought of this book when I have been starting to work at IBM, because I think that intrinsic in what we just assume is that bigger is better, right? That a bigger company is wiser, that they know more, and it actually may not be the case. So this is a great quote from the book. An intelligent fool can make things bigger and more complex, but it takes a ton of genius and a lot of courage to move in the opposite direction. And I think as marketers, we really appreciate that because we know how difficult it is to make something simple. And so as a marketer in a large company, not only are you trying to simplify messaging and simplify go-to-market, but you're also really trying to simplify process as much as possible and rollout and how to do all of this stuff on such a large scale. So I thought, I would share some advice that I had on how you can kind of start thinking small at a big company. Okay, number one. Take time to understand the big picture. This is kind of fun. The picture on the top is actually a zoomed in picture of a record. So a lot of times when you are performing a function, it's really easy to see something and not to understand the bigger picture, right? And at a big company, you can't have everybody running around asking why and like trying to, figure stuff out, because then it would just be total chaos. You need people to just focus and do what they're supposed to be doing. But I believe that if product marketing truly is going to have a seat at the table and be a strategic thinker, it is our responsibility to be the people in the room who are asking why. So I have kind of been able to use my my lack of time at IBM to play this card a lot. And it's been really interesting. We were like, I'm sorry, I'm new and just still trying to figure this out. But like, wait, why do we like do it? What is the assumptions around this? And you would be surprised at the different answers that you get or the lack of clarity around it. So important to note. And I think being able to have those as kind of your, when you find disconnects like that, I think it's important, and especially our job as connectors, to try to connect the dots, pull people together. If you're getting disparate, answers from people, work it out, right? And try to kind of make that more cohesive. The second is understanding your role on the team. This one's pretty obvious, but for me, it's taken on a new flavor. Again, like going back to the matrixed organizations, what this means that I've come to understand is that you have people who are aligned to the same things you are, but not completely, right? So everyone has their own kind of little angle that they're coming into it at. So I think that it's really important up front to understand, okay, are you worldwide? Are you with a geo? Are you product specific? Are you market specific? Like, what's your angle? What are you coming into this as? Because then I could figure out the areas that we have common goals and areas that, I may care about and, they just don't, right? So I think that this is a good way to, start a conversation to really navigate how to figure out how to align with other people. A lot of people who do this wrong, they're just looking at their own initiatives and their own kind of looking through their own lens. We all know that this is all about teamwork. So it's about finding those allies in areas where you have common goals. Third is pretty obvious, prioritizing. The one thing that I have seen at IBM, and I'm sure many big companies, is, you could absolutely be consumed with all of the wrong things. I think, and I would be interested in if somebody was willing to do this, I think you could probably pass for probably years with just going to meetings and not actually doing any work either. I'm not really interested in doing that, but it's an interesting hypothesis that I have. So if anybody is interested in doing that, please report back to me and see how long it takes to get found out. So something about prioritization is if you're listening to the incoming requests that are coming in for you, you will not get to the truly important work. So it's important to have your own list of priorities and your own time that really takes that like heavy thinking that Angela was referring to, and having that stuff marinate, because you can absolutely in any job get caught up in the details and the minutia, and if you don't put time aside for that kind of stuff, then you're never going to really move forward and evolve. Personally, I like taking Fridays to kind of close out the week, plan the week ahead, and really time box some hours in my day to, do research, do that heavy thinking, the stuff that you just need the headspace for. 4, talk to your customers. None of this is surprising to you. What was surprising to me is that at a big company like IBM, it's not expected. When I was at startups, I had customers banging down my door. I had salespeople banging down my door. It was just a part of how I functioned and how I lived. And one of the blessings and curses of a big company is that you have people to do that for you, right? There's someone whose whole job is to interview customers for case studies and testimonials. You have a research department. You want to have interviews of a win-loss study? Oh, there are people who do that, right? And I think that to some extent that can help you, and that gives you a lot of data points. But I know for me personally, I have to have that one-to-one conversation in order to understand the finer points of messaging. So, for example, we're going through a messaging exercise right now, and in the past like 2 or 3 weeks, I've talked to a ton of business partners and customers because I want to hear the words that they're using, which is a lot different than reading the, results of a survey. So this is something that's very important, and it's something I had to kind of like actually put a lot of effort in figuring out how to do, because especially with our customer segment, these are CTOs, CIOs at Fortune 500, Fortune 50 companies. Like, they're not really easily accessible people. So I had to spend some time figuring out what the right routes were that I could get this type of feedback. Fifth point, stay connected inside and outside of your company. It's really easy because teams are so big and business units are so big in large companies to kind of stay within your unit. I think just coming from a startup background, I never have thought like that. And I know that there are business units that are literally in the same building as me that are dealing with the same problems, and they're, have gone through the same thing. So I've kind of found some peers that I can tap and ask questions to that can help me accelerate getting to the right answers. Because if we're having trouble in our business unit with something, chances are they've experienced it before too. The other thing is, and I really do miss this about the startup community, especially in Austin, which I know San Francisco has a super vibrant, startup community as well. But I love, how collaborative and what a community the startup companies have. And at a big company, you kind of get in your bubble and you forget what else is out there. And it's so cool to see the innovation and the cool things that people are doing. And, you really have to, I'm trying to stay connected with that community as well. And then this one is, just about using tools that startups use to think small. So some tools that I've used very recently, just in the past few weeks with this research project that I've been doing, interviewing with jobs to be done methodology. I love the value prop design. If you haven't used that from Strategizer, it's a really helpful function. So bringing some of these like outside in type of frameworks to help reverse thinking from product out. So I love some of these, and luckily at IBM we have a really strong design thinking discipline. So I've been kind of proactively pulling those people in to help get to better outcomes on the product marketing side. So just in summary, take time to understand the big picture. Don't be afraid to ask why. Because if you're wondering why, then probably there are a lot of other people that are wondering why too. Number 2, know your role on the team. Find allies in people who have common motivations that you do. Number 3, prioritize and know just your to-do list is not probably the most important things you're doing. The most important things you're doing probably people are not asking you for. They're the big, hard pick problems. That is one of the reasons why I think we all got into product marketing. Talk to your customers. Don't need to say more there. Stay connected. If you're facing problems, very few problems are, not just, reinvented problems from somewhere else. Someone else has probably faced the same challenge. And then use tools from startups. Stay connected. Don't lose that startup mentality and that startup spirit, and leveraging the community. So any other thoughts? I'd love to stay in touch. Here's my contact information.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So we have a couple minutes for a couple questions, and I'm looking around under the bright lights. Does anyone have a question? Because I absolutely do to start, but you get to go first. You.
Hi, I'm from Google, so I feel your pain on the
Okay.
big company. Sometimes it looks like a Ferrari from the outside, but it's like a puttering, gigantic RV from the inside. One of the things you mentioned is you form this bridge between strategy and vision and execution. And I feel that way as well. A lot of times that means I have a whole bunch of urgency. Sometimes I have legitimacy from the research or data I bring, but I never have the power. So what have you done to sort of influence your power in the organization as well?
Well, that's a great question. So I have a pretty direct line to the CMO. And this is actually one of the initiatives that she has like mandated. So that definitely helps. But that does not solve for, so that's kind of the marketing function. So I kind of have allies there and have a direct line there. What I don't have a direct line is to the other business units, right? And kind of getting the ear of them. So like I said, matrixed organization. So what I have done is found people who are influential and kind of in the know within those business units, not the top people, but like people who know the top people. And I regularly keep them updated with what I'm doing. So just had one of these calls today where I'm like, hey, Jeff, it's great. Like, let me tell you some of the stuff that we're doing around messaging and would love to get your advice and feedback. And so in that way, you're kind of being forthcoming about some of the stuff that you're doing. So people are always thinking about, you know, if there's an opportunity to interject that into a conversation. And then also, you know, trying to figure out if there's any sort of commonalities that you could leverage to get common goals. So.
Next question. Well, I have a question for you, because I have done this a lot. And for you in the audience, we all know that most of us are going to have many, many jobs. And many of us here are going to be toggling between startup and enterprise throughout our career. If you haven't done it, first do it. If you haven't done it, please recognize it's incredibly hard to do. And you are moving at an entirely different gear with entirely different strategies and priorities. It's neat. It's magical when it starts to work. Here's the question. As you go through the corridors of IBM, do people recognize you as having a startup DNA? And do you find that that helps accelerate what you're trying to do? People gravitate toward that?
So I think that, first of all, I introduce myself. When I'm like introducing myself, I say, hey, you know, I've been at IBM since January. I'm brand new. Came from startups, like growth stage background, proven background, product marketing, like I know what I'm talking about, right? But in a different context. A lot of people are open to that. I think what it helps to distinguish is sometimes there are problems that are truly hard to solve, and there are sometimes problems that internally we make them hard to solve, where you're like, man, we're really overcomplicating this. And so with us overcomplicating the internal problems, like I can't really help there. But the problems that are really hard we're trying to solve that are just, you know, hard problems, I can help there. So I think that it's helpful to distinguish the two. And I think it's helpful to call that out as well. Because at IBM, you have seasoned IBMers that have been there for like 20, 30 years, right? And, you know, in that case, it's really hard for them to distinguish like, hey, is this like something everybody has a problem with? Or is this something that, you know, just we do? And you could be like, no, it's you actually, right? So
yeah, cognitive diversity, you can put this under the umbrella of that, different ideas, different perspectives. You go into the boardroom, and the more different perspectives that you bring into that room, the more successful the outcome is going to be. Mm-hmm. The outcome for you guys is to say thank you to her, and then you get to head to lunch. So thank you, Misha.
Thank you.